My name is Stephanie, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the definition of conflict, but also dive a little deeper, trying to gain a better understanding of what conflict is and kind of what goes into that. Conflict occurs when two or more groups have differences or don't agree upon an issue. They may have different ideas, beliefs, or understandings of something, or they may just have a different end goal. These things might be caused by things like different upbringing, political beliefs, religious beliefs, different cultures, different life experiences. Pretty much anything can affect that. So, when two or more groups or individuals have incompatible goals, ideas, or interests, this creates conflict. And when one group feels that the other group may have like a leg up on them or the ability to keep them from reaching their goals, this is where these issues come from. This power can be real or perceived, but if they feel this, then that is where it comes from. Conflict often stems from individuals or groups having different upbringings. Communication is a very important part of conflict and can be either positive or negative. Conflict can be, and the communication can be. The communication can either help or can mess up conflict. And the lack of conflict can actually, like I said before, it's not always bad. The lack of conflict can actually cause new ideas, perspectives, or point of views to come to surface, because without that conflict between the groups, you kind of wouldn't have known that somebody else was thinking differently. And oftentimes that ends up being a positive connotation from conflict. Thank you. Also, next, myself and Liz will be talking about perspectives on conflict. So we'll see you soon. Hi guys, Stephanie again. So I am going to touch just real briefly on the first part of this, perspectives of conflict, and then Liz is going to finish it up. The first one is instrumental perspective on conflict. This perspective focuses on a group's performance and the outcomes. It can either be positive or negative, productive or destructive, I guess, as the book had stated. But both can be positive, right? A productive is, where it's really helping them get through that, work through the conflict, the communication, and then the destructive would be where they're just not able to communicate or not able to move past that, and that would keep the group from functioning effectively and reaching their goals. Number 2 is going to be developmental perspective on conflict. This perspective sees conflict as a natural part of working in a group and kind of the order of operations, the way things go. And this perspective focuses on the fact that the resolution of a conflict actually helps that team to grow, strengthen, move past it. And so it can be very helpful and help them move towards their goals, but may have negative effects in a group. Not all conflict, by not allowing conflict to emerge. For example, groups and organizations that rely or gravitate towards that groupthink mentality, that can be detrimental to them because they're not seeing those different perspectives and those different ways or resolutions for conflict. Number 3, this perspective is the political perspective. This perspective is centered around the idea that conflict is a positive and productive part and allows for those different views or ideas or different solutions to emerge. By doing on this perspective, people have to hear what others are saying. Doesn't mean they have to necessarily go with it, but by allowing those different perspective, it allows people to see more different viewpoints and be successful. So I'm going to let Liz finish up.
Hi, my name is Liz, and I'm going to be discussing more on the different perspectives of conflict. And it's going to be especially challenging the idea that conflict is always negative. One perspective that is presented is that a conflict can be productive. particularly when it centers around a task or ideas rather than just solutions or personal attacks on people. From this view, conflict keeps groups engaged and prevents members from accepting ideas too quickly without the proper discussion or elaboration or collaborating with others. It forces people to improve their problem-solving skills and decision-making, and forces more members to defend, explain, and refine those ideas. Another perspective focuses on why conflict has that feeling of disruptiveness. Even when it has those potential benefits, conflict creates anxiety within a lot of people and affects how group members communicate. During conflict, many people repeat the same terms or phrases without clarifying what they mean, which can lead to misunderstanding or misrepresentation of their ideas. Anxiety also reduces people's ability to take perspective of others and like standing in their shoes kind of thing when they think they're discussing the same issue. From this perspective, conflict feels harmful, not because disagreement exists, but the communication becomes less effective. This reading also has the perspective that conflict is inherent in group life. Groups are initially made up of people with like different skills, values, interests, viewpoints, goals, and these differences naturally have a way to create tension within each other. While the diversity strengthens the group, it has the ability to function smoothly in differences that aren't managed well. Another perspective also highlights the differences in communication styles and power dynamics within groups. More dominant or outspoken members may speak more or guide decisions or influence decisions in those ways, while submissive or quiet members hold their opposing views or just choose not to express how they feel. This can create appearance of like agreement even though they disagree, or conflicts exist in between the surface of what they really mean. With this viewpoint, conflict, it's not always visible, it's just not outspoken, and it's suppressed and doesn't really become resolved. Finally, the reading discusses like conflict as different orientations and identities within a group. Some members are task-oriented, while others are relationship-oriented, leading to tension over their priorities. Individuals may also feel torn between belonging to groups and maintaining their individuality, which can lead to internal and group conflict. According to the law of inherent conflict, no matter the group or the task, conflict will always exist due to different perceptions.
Hi, my name is Abby, and I'm going to be going over types of conflict and power. So to start, I'm going to be talking about two things that really go hand in hand, and that is different types of conflict and how power shows up in groups. So types of conflict. First, I think it's important to point out that conflict isn't automatically a bad thing. We usually think of conflict as something negative, but it can actually be productive when it brings up new ideas, helps clarify an issue, or improves decision making. So conflict becomes destructive when it drains the group's energy, it turns personal, or prevents people from working together. One common type of conflict is relational conflict. This is based on personal feelings, different personalities, emotions, rather than the actual task. For example, if someone in a group ignores another person's ideas because they don't like them, the conflict becomes relational. This kind of conflict tends to increase emotional responses and can seriously hurt the trust dynamic within a group. Another type is task conflict. Task conflict focuses on disagreements about ideas, goals, and how something should be done. This could be disagreements over solutions, the different priorities, or even responsibilities. When handled well, Task conflict can actually be helpful because it pushes groups to think more critically and come up with better solutions. The problem is that it is not managed well. If it is not managed well, task conflict can easily turn into relational conflict. The third type is process conflict, which is about how the work gets done. This includes disagreements over roles, who is doing what, time management, or access to different resources. Process conflict often causes frustration when group members feel things are unfair and poorly organized. Moving on to power is closely connected to conflict and plays a role in almost every group, even when we don't really talk about it. Power refers to a person's ability to influence others or affect decisions. Since people bring different skills, experiences, and roles into a group, power is rarely equal among members. Power itself isn't good or bad. When it is used appropriately, it can help a group stay organized, make decisions, and manage conflict. When it is misused, it can damage relationships and make conflict even worse. One type of power is reward power. This happens when someone can offer something positive, praise, attention, favors, rewards. But on the other hand, coercive power is based on punishment or threats. While coercive power might get short-term compliance, it usually creates resentment and leads into conflict. Legitimate power comes from a formal position or role within the group, like a leader or a chairperson. This type of power exists because of the role itself, not necessarily the individual. And expert power is based on knowledge or skills. Group members give someone expert power when they recognize that the person knows what they're doing in a specific area. Expert power only works when the expertise is actually demonstrated and accepted by the group.
Hi everyone, my name is Diaz, and I'm going to be finishing up the section on power by focusing on informational power and how power actually functions within group relationships. Informational power is influence that comes from information a group member has and how they use it to persuade others. This type of power does not come from a job title or authority. It comes from knowledge. For example, in a group like a city council or a project team, different members may have access to different types of information. One person might understand budgets while another understands regulations or timelines. When those members share their information effectively, it strengthens the group and improves decision making. Another important point about informational power is that it works best when information is shared openly. When one person controls information or withholds it, that power can create tension or mistrust in a group. So informational power can either support collaboration or increase conflict depending on how it is used. The chapter also explains that power does not exist automatically. For someone to have power, the other group members must recognize it and accept it. Power is created through interaction. If group members do not acknowledge someone's expertise or information, then that person's influence is limited. Finally, the chapter emphasizes that power is fluid. It can change depending on the situation, the task, and the relationship within the group. When power is shared among group members, participation becomes more balanced and group satisfaction increases. When power is uneven or misused, conflict becomes more likely. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name's Lauren. Today I'm going to be talking on some different conflict management strategies. There's 5 that is listed in these chapters, so I'm going to go through each one of those and kind of go through what they all entail. The first one is collaborating. This is kind of the ideal and most effective strategy found. It is the most win-win per se solution to conflict management. This strategy usually promotes instead of inhibits relationships, which can usually get tense when there's conflicting situations in a group. It uses open communication and it creates more of a common language that everyone can kind of be involved in and get on the same page about. Typically when collaboration is being used we instead of I is used a lot to make a more common ground for everyone, that they're trying to find an ideal situation for everyone, an ideal resolution to the conflict. Typically, this strategy allows everyone to listen and kind of hear everyone's ideas and fully get to know everyone's side of the story. It does take a little bit more time and energy to get to the end, but it does typically produce a more higher quality solution to the conflict. It also helps to build community and commitment within a group. The second one is competing. This is not an ideal conflict management strategy. It is more of a win-lose situation. The outcome is typically poorer than if using collaboration. It typically forces one idea to one side of the group, and it kind of creates tension within the environment. A good reason to use competing as a strategy is if there is, say, an emergency situation and a decision needs to be made on the spot. This strategy is typically used to create that strategy or to find that resolution to that conflict, like stat. The third strategy is accommodating. This is for more assertive members of a group. It typically is like, oh, I love your ideas, you're right. Giving everyone else validation for their reasoning. They kind of often want to learn and kind of grow from other people. There's more value for other people in the relationship when accommodation is being used, and this is typically used when there's a little bit of a disagreement for a group, but not really for big significant problems. There's also kind of a disclosed expectation that if I get my way this time, someone else is going to get their way next time, or vice versa. The fourth strategy is avoiding. This is more of a non-confrontational conflict strategy. People typically like to avoid conflict, and they like to withdraw from it either verbally or physically, like not speaking at all or like physically removing themselves from the conflict. There's oftentimes like nervous tension going on within a group when people don't want to be part of a discussion, and this is not the best conflict strategy management or strategy for conflict management. Kind of an idea with this one is there's no reason to fight over something you cannot have. So if one side's gonna win, why fight about it? It's not worth it in the end. And typically, a lot of avoiding can cause tension as well. The last and final conflict management strategy is going to be compromise. This can often settle the problem, but it does offer incomplete satisfaction towards both ends of the group. Since neither one of them is getting what they want, if there's two sides to this conflict, it's kind of like, oh, no one's happy with the end result. It's more of used as a temporary fix, I would say, than collaboration, which is the ideal solution. And then there is this idea that compromising is used when there's a time constraint. So if something needs to be fixed faster, because compromising is gonna be a quicker fix than, say, collaboration. So if an idea or a solution needs to come across fast, compromising is a great way to do that. And then it can also cause tension in the long run as well, but is mostly used for more of a short-term fix. And then typically this is when there's super conflicting views, there's not going to be an end settlement and no one's really going to be happy with the end result. So those are the 5 different conflict management strategies. Next, Luis is going to explain to us how to choose the best one for our personal situation.
Hey everyone, it's Luis again. I will finish the conflict management strategy section by focusing on how groups decide which strategy to use. When conflict happens, people are managing 3 things at once. They are managing their own view of the conflict, their perception of other person's view, and the relationship between them. Most people naturally prioritize their own perspective first when emotions are involved. As a result, attention to other person's viewpoint often decreases as conflict continues. The chapter explains that there is no single best conflict management strategy for every situation. Instead, the most effective strategy depends on several factors. One of those factors is the level of emotions involved. High emotional conflict usually requires more careful communication, while lower emotional conflict allows for a more direct approach. The chapter also emphasizes that how you communicate matters just as much as what you say. Tone, word choice, nonverbal behavior can either escalate a conflict or reduce conflict. For example, calmly expressing disagreement can open the door to collaboration, while using sarcasm or dismissive language can make a situation worse. Overall, groups that rely on collaborative strategies tend to build stronger relationships and are viewed as more effective over time. Thank you.
To wrap up the reading, it emphasizes that conflict is a normal part of normal group interaction. Even though conflict has a negative tone to it, it occurs because many members are interdependent and have different goals, values, or perspectives. Since everyone cannot get their same way at the same time, conflict is usually unavoidable. In the reading, it also makes it clear that conflict is not always harmful. When it's managed effectively, conflict can be productive, it can be encouraging, it can be collaborative, it can help to create new ideas, help to evaluate alternatives. Because groups rely on diverse skill sets and viewpoints to accomplish these complex tasks, those same differences can also create disagreements between each other, making effective communication really essential. Conflict can be rational, stemming from personality or emotional differences, or substantive, involving like tasks, decisions, or procedures. Power also plays a role in a lot of conflict, as power is fluid and develops through communication. It's often based on like roles, expertise, information, or like control over resources. And then there's also 5 conflict management strategies that the book references. Collaboration is the most effective, as it focuses more on the problem solving and satisfying everyone's concerns. Competing and accommodating results in like a win-lose scenario. Avoiding involves withdrawal, and compromising offers like a middle ground that does not really satisfy both sides of the parties. Overall, the key takeaways are that conflict should not be avoided, but managed through communication and collaboration. When it's handled well, conflict can improve decision making and strengthen group relationships to lead to better outcomes.